Back to World Crisis Radio. Just a couple of political notes tangential to that conversation. We see from The Hill, here we have The Hill, Capitol Hill publication, Tuesday, November 23rd. We can see that the DeFazio Capture group is attempting, well, this was first of all the group that attempted to stop Pelosi from becoming the minority leader, right? They wanted to delay that decision until some lessons had been drawn. They were also joined by Bill Pascrell, Democrat of New Jersey. They tried to stop Pelosi, but now that she's imposed herself, at least apparently for the moment, they are attempting to force Pelosi into a confrontation mode against Obama. This is, of course, it's not a strategy of strength, but rather a weakness, but it does have some possibilities, and the idea is don't give Obama what he wants. That's the analysis coming from DeFazio. We think that the greatest failing of the Congress was that the House enabled the White House, and the White House was not always right, meaning that they were always wrong. We've got to push them harder from our position, right? Essentially this DeFazio Capture group, and do what Democrats need and what's expected by Democrats. Yes, that's at least the start. And of course, it's better to go with issues, right? It's better to make the Tobin tax, the Wall Street sales tax, the stopping of fraud closures. That would essentially be your program. No cutting and gutting, number one. Pay for it with a tax on Wall Street, the Wall Street sales tax. Stop fraud closures, and nobody loses their primary residence for the duration of the Depression. And then $600 billion, if $600 billion is available for QE2, Bernanke's quantitative easing 2, the answer to that crisis is commandeer that money and get that into your national infrastructure program, your 100 reactors, your 1,000 hospitals, your 100,000 miles of maglev, your rebuilding of the interstate highway system, rebuilding of all water, canal, and related water systems. So that's an approach. So that at least there is some resistance in the now decimated ranks of the House Democrats. Concerning the impact of all of this on the international financial markets, on the Tuesday before U.S. Thanksgiving, we had a flight to quality, right? The dollar went up. The U.S. Treasury bonds went up significantly. The 2-year Treasury note was going for 0.44% interest per year, which is obviously a very low interest rate. So everybody in the world is piling into those Treasury bonds. How long will it last? Well, Bill Gross of PIMCO says that the bond party is over. Well, I can see how it's going to end when you have fanatical ideologues inspired by this foreign toxic doctrine, so-called Austrian school, domesticated as Chicago boys, economics, and they decide that the goal of a default by the United States, a national bankruptcy of this country, is a positive policy goal, because they would say that's the only way we can destroy the social safety net, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment benefits. We've got to destroy that social safety net to go back to the paradise of a free market, which has never existed in the United States, and indeed has not existed since the coming of the new Stone Age, right? Since the Neolithic, there has not been a free market anywhere, because there's always been a government. So you've been dealing with political economy and not straight up pure Austrian school mystification. So that is that's a consideration. The beginning of the end will be if this brigade of essentially pro Wall Street fake populists come in and say we are going to refuse to raise the deficit ceiling, provoke a default, and pitch the entire world into chaos. The United States bankrupt, the dollar falling by 50, 60, 70%. Central banks all over the world bankrupt because they've got their reserves in dollars, a dollar panic, hyperinflation on the home front. That's the scenario you should contemplate. In other words, the Austrian economics, as practiced to some degree by Brüning in 1930 to 1932, doomed Germany to the tragedy of 1933 to 1945. And if these Austrians are allowed to play out the logic of their fanatical ideological beliefs, then the future for the United States is very grim. And you don't see anybody, certainly not Obama, Biden, Pelosi, Reid, this cast, which remains the same, they are not able to fight. So I guess it's up to the people to bring forward the programmatic ideas that are not there. Now, let's shift gears. We're turning away now from U.S. domestic politics, the Obama crisis, to get back to the world strategic situation, and let's see how far we can go with that. The Korean crisis, this is essentially the same circus we have seen again and again. The U.S. presence in Asia since the Gulf of Tonkin in August of 1964 has to do with provocations, military provocations that are used to create political facts on the ground. And in this case, you've always got to ask yourself, what's going on right before the alleged incident? Was there any activity that had come out of a clear blue sky, or had there not been some kind of heating up of an atmosphere of tension and acrimony because of the actions of the wonderful U.S., in this case, Korean side? And it turns out, of course, there had been. There's a maneuver called Hoguk, H-O-G-U-K. The Hoguk maneuver series, right, drills, exercises, involves 70,000 Republic of Korea troops. And we're now in this area, the western side of the Korean Peninsula. We're on the Yellow Sea side. We're on the side facing China, and it's a very ragged coast. And the military line of demarcation, which is essentially a ceasefire in place from 1953, goes through a whole bunch of islands, peninsulas, promontories, and so forth. So it's a very ragged and chaotic border. It's not a nice, clean, neat line through a landmass. So essentially, the South Koreans have been having this drill for the past many years, and we find out, interestingly enough, that the result of this has been that there were already shooting incidents in these western islands in 1999, in 2002, and last year, in November 2009, there was also a shooting incident, not quite on the scale of this one. So it's essentially, the South Koreans know anytime they want to get a crisis ginned up, they can simply call this Hoguk maneuver in the western islands, and you can get a rise out of the north, and you got a crisis. Back in a minute.